Kaylee Gathard, welcome to the Preconstruction Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely. What about the commitment, folks, from Kaylee? 6 a.m. PST. She's up, coffee in hand. Is the dog still asleep, or is he going to make an appearance soon? Or
He's
she?
he's taking a nap, so it's his mid-morning nap.
Good. Well, if he does waking up, we'd love to get a chat with him as well. Good. Well, listen, thanks for making your time available. For anybody who doesn't know you, Kaylee, give us a quick idea of where you're at right now in the country, who you're working for, and what you're doing.
Yeah, so I am in Western operations, specifically in Sacramento, California. I'm with the Boldt Company. So my group covers Northern California down to Southern California, a little bit of Oregon and a little bit of Nevada in the Western area.
Lovely, very good. And Precon Manager, to give people a little bit of context, Kaylee reached out to me about the salary survey in 2024. She downloaded it. We kind of had a bit of back and forth. She then kindly and her team contributed to 2025 salary survey, which we're in the process of digesting all the data and which will be out in a few weeks, which is great. And then we got starting to talk about titles and stuff. And I kind of invited her on the podcast, which thankfully it's come to fruition. So that's how it all started. But let's hear about how it all started with you back in the day. Talk to us about high school, Kaylee, what you were thinking, what you went through, and then how you get into construction.
Yeah, so in high school, I was very adamant that I was going to college to work with kids on the spectrum. And I did that. I went to school at Sac State and got my bachelor's in biological psychology. I worked as a behavioral therapist for a few years and quickly realized that that salary in California didn't quite cut it for the lifestyle that I wanted to live. And my husband, who is also in the construction industry, said, "Well, why don't you go try out construction?" I was like, "Oh, no, sure." So I went and I applied to be a project engineer, and the rest was history. I fell in love with the industry, with the position, with every aspect of it. So it's an honor to be part of this industry for sure.
Brilliant. I love everything about that, but specifically your husband. What's your husband's name?
Stephen.
Stephen. Stephen deserves a huge amount of credit. I have been piping on this podcast about everyone talking to their aunts, their uncles, their nephews, their nieces, their brothers and sisters about if they're not happy in their current occupation or their business, then come to construction because we need as much talent as possible. And trust me, Kaylee, you will have known already your psychological degree will now be valuable in dealing with all those
Yes.
temperamental superintendents and project managers.
Use it on a daily basis.
Very good. So you obviously worked in the industry with kids with behavioral issues for about 4 years. Then you made the step over to construction. How easy was that transition?
It was surprisingly easy. The company that I worked for gave me the opportunity to work with interns at the time. So I was able to learn and mentor at the same exact time in tandem. So as I was training, I was learning, and I realized it was very similar. I'm doing, as far as the social aspect, I'm doing the same things as I was doing when I was working with kids. I'm managing people, and that's what I was doing. I just do it in a different way. I do it a little bit softer than maybe someone who's been in the industry their whole lives or grew up in it. But it was very easy, and everyone was so supportive. I never was told, "Oh, you don't have your degree in construction. We're not going to listen to you, right? You need to put in 10 years before I start to listen to your opinion." It was almost valued. The opinions of people not in the industry or didn't come from it or didn't go to school for it were more valued sometimes than those were because it was a different aspect of it. So I had a great team, great mentor, and I think that foundation really, really helped accelerate to where I am today.
Yeah, I'm delighted to hear that as well because you do hear some horror stories, and I deal with hiring managers all the time that say, "No, I don't want to speak to them. They've got to have their construction management, their engineering degree," and it's just a very closed mindset. So glad to hear that. And tell me, coming from education, you thought it would be good to go back and get some sort of qualification. Talk to me about that.
I did. So growing up, like many people, I was told, go to school, get your 4-year degree. You have to have that to be successful. And now that I'm older, I realize that that is not always true for everything that you want to do. So when I came into the industry, all of my peers had their construction management degree or they had a background in architecture. So I thought, oh, well, I guess I should go get something, right? So I went and did a certificate program through San Diego State University that was geared towards estimating specifically. And it was really beneficial. I learned the technical things like the acronyms RFI and RFP, RFQ, things like that that maybe I was like, I don't know what that is. But that's what that helped me with. And I got to meet some great professors that I still talk to today that have mentored me through my career. And I do realize now that maybe I didn't have to have that. It wasn't a necessity. And so I really like to preach that to anyone that I might be mentoring. I work with kids in high school for the CIEF program here locally that pushes kids into AEC careers. And I tell them all the time, if you want to go to college, that's great. And I definitely will never tell you not to, but it's not the only path. It's not the only thing that you can do to be successful in something you want to do.
Love it. I'm going to pick up on two things you said there. First of all, I want to talk about the San Diego State University, that particular certification. What would you have liked now that you've got 11, 12 years in the industry? What would you advise the universities, the colleges to do? Would you advise them to get involved in it? Basically what was missing in your certification or the year cert that you did?
Yeah, the what was missing was the diversity of type of work that we do. I learned in San Diego State, we really focused on very traditional RFP, hard bid, quantity takeoff, and then you build the job. We know now that that's not the only way that the industry works. We have design build, we have IFOAs, we have early pre-con and feasibility pieces that was never taught or introduced at that level. So when I was thrown into it, oh, you have a feasibility study, I kind of was thrown into the fire of have fun, figure it out, kind of create your own world of how you do that. And now each estimator has created their own world of what that means and what they do for that process. So maybe you work at one place and you're a rock star at feasibility and early design and conceptual estimating, and then you go to another company that you think you're going to do the same exact thing, and you realize, well, I'm starting over now. I actually don't know anything, even though it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I really wish they would focus more on the diversity of the types of work that we do. Maybe focus on the contract types and what pinch points, what are different between them, what
Yeah.
changes our workflow depending on that.
Love it. I love it. I mean, if I know you listen to the podcast. It's a big thing for me. I think the construction management degree, the engineering degrees, the certifications, they're just not up to date. They're not up to speed. They're not evolving as quick as the industry. Now, and I get it. That's difficult. It's our industry is changing every month, if not every day. So, they're still way, they're years behind, whereas the industry is moving and changing every month. So
Yeah.
appreciate that. Now, talk to me about the CIPF.
CIEF.
Sorry, CIEF. I
Yeah.
like that. So you go in almost as a careers teacher or a mentor to people and just talk to about the construction industry and obviously your own experience within the child behavior industry.
Yeah. Yep. So the program is ran through the local Builders Exchange, SRBX here, and they have a few different programs. One is focused on the design build portion of the world. And so we have a lead mentor. So I would sign up as lead mentor. And then we bring other folks in, right? So through the process, we bring in an architect to discuss design. We bring in a safety manager to talk about safety. We bring in a superintendent or project manager or even an accountant to discuss what that looks like. And then the students actually design something. They have to come up with an idea, they design it, they work with the architect to create a model, And then this is done through 20 to 40 schools, depending on the year. And they all compete. So they put on a presentation. So they get to have public speaking skills. And we coach them through that. Obviously, we don't throw them in the fire. And they then at the end, they get to, now they have contacts in the industry and they've seen every aspect of it. And that's what we're really, really trying to push is you love business and you love money and you love dealing with finances. Great. You can go into construction. You love art. You love design. You love being the person that knows the codes. Great. You could go into construction. You love building with your hands. Great. You can go into construction. So really pushing that there's so much more than it's not just swinging a hammer. And that's what we advertise all the time, right?
I love it. I mean, we need those everywhere. That's amazing. I know when I went to school, there wasn't enough of that. 2001, when I wasn't finishing high school or secondary school back in Ireland, there just wasn't enough variety. I did not understand the world of anything, business, construction, marketing, finance, just did not. Nobody ever explained it to me. They stood there and they got you to regurgitate stuff, but they never actually got you to think about it. So I love that idea. So away you went, Kaylee, straight into Mark One Builders as a project engineer. What was the most enjoyable part of the early days, and how did you get up to speed? Because looking at your career, you've kind of progressed quite quickly through the ranks. Give us an idea of why you thought that you were able to do that. Was it your mindset? Was it from another industry? Give us the secret sauce?
Yeah, so I obviously, like you said, I started as a project engineer, and the company I was with, Market One at the time, I was working in their special projects, so the smaller projects under $5 million. And that group actually did everything from start to finish. So I was able to do the estimating, the actual execution of the work, and the closeout of the work, and then kind of the postmortem, the recap of all the work. And we worked as our own little pod. We were our own little department all by ourselves. So I got to have early discussions with trade partners and our superintendents. And I say it all the time, but I learned everything from phone calls and outreach during the bidding process with the estimators from my subcontractors and trade partners. They were the ones that were really willing to sit there on the phone and talk to me for an hour about why it's important to have floor prep, or why it's important, just really the details that you wouldn't learn unless you were on a construction project watching it happen or doing the work. And obviously that was not going to be the case for me. I wasn't going to be the one physically executing the work. So I really owe it all to the people within the industry, specifically the trade partners. And I preach it to my interns all the time. Talk to your trade partners. They're the A+ experts on everything. We're just the C+ experts on all this. They're the ones that know the nitty gritty and all the details. So soak it in. And I know sometimes it could be daunting speaking to someone for an hour and a half, and you're like, oh man, I have 40 more phone calls to make. What am I going to do? My suggestion is take the time. Just do it. Take the time, take notes, listen. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I wasn't afraid to do that. I think that being younger and being female really did also help me. I wasn't afraid to ask those questions where maybe it could be a little bit more intimidating from a male aspect, asking question, right? Oh, well, you're stupid. Why don't you know that? Like, you should know how to do that. Didn't your parents teach you? Didn't your grandpa teach you? Didn't your dad teach you? So I had a little bit of an edge there. So
You also had a little bit of an edge because your father was a GC, a local GC, Kaylee.
I did, yes. My father has been in construction his whole life. He grew up as a carpenter. He went to school for construction management at Chico State, and now he's a partner at a local GC. And my husband makes fun of him because my husband was the one that got me in the industry and not my dad, who I have known my entire life, obviously.
We talked about it earlier. As a child, the son or the daughter of a general contractor, the time that they need to put on into running a general contractor. So I can imagine you looking at that going, "Whoa, that's too intense." But one thing I like about what you just said, when I'm speaking to hiring managers and they're asking for, say, a junior or mid-level estimator, one of the things they want is on-site experience. Um, and if you can't get that, your example is absolutely brilliant. If you can't get that, or you're not going to get an opportunity to go on site, or you don't want to go on site, the trade partners are where you're going to do most of your learning. I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like I said, and I mean, I've made so many relationships that I'm not embarrassed anymore to just call someone up and be like, I don't know what this is, or I don't know what this acronym is. And sometimes that's intimidating, right? Someone looks at on paper, you've been doing this for 11 years, you know everything, or you're supposed to know this by now. Again, those trade partners, I'll be forever grateful
Yeah,
that they're
absolutely.
part of my
And the
career.
beauty of it is, Kaylee, what's the worst thing that they can say? No, you should
Yeah.
know that, and hang up the phone. I mean, then it tells you a little bit about them as a trade partner if they're not willing to help you, because it goes both ways. And
Mm-hmm.
as you said, we rely as general contractors, we rely heavily on the trade partners, not only to build the projects, but for knowledge and expertise knowledge as well. So I love that. So after that, early on, project engineer, you got into estimating. Was that always the role that you wanted to go down, or did you get into construction not knowing?
So I had an inkling that that's what I wanted to do. I really liked the early stages and making a difference early on. Um, it kind of fell into my lap though at Market One. They were in transition of their estimating, their department head manager for pre-construction and estimating. The woman I had went to go work with specifically, she actually left and went to another company. And as you know, finding an estimator is difficult, let alone a department head for estimating. So there really wasn't anyone to do the work. And the one of the owners, Tom Ford, asked me, "Do you want to do this while we try and find someone?" And I said, "Sure, why not? I think I could do it. Let me take a stab at it." And then I that's when I really truly fell in love with pre-construction and estimating, as I was thrown in the fire of things that I'd never done before in my whole career, nor was I qualified at the time to do the things.
Oh,
Um,
that's
but it worked
brilliant.
out.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it, that being thrown in the fire.
And you will have, from listening to the other podcasts, you will know that a lot of the successful people and the people have climbed the ladders quite quickly. They've always put their hand up to do something different, or do something that they may think, I don't know if I can do this. So that is and I always think there's a time in your career when that opportunity comes, and if you don't take it, it can be detrimental to your growth. But that was obviously your time. You've taken it. And now, as pre-construction manager at the Boldt Company, you're thriving. Now, let's move to the topic that we were talking about previously, was the titles. Tell me how that came up at the Boldt Company, and where you're at right now, and what your thoughts are in relation to pre-construction and estimating titles.
Yeah, so I really started thinking about it when we were hiring. So I was asked, do we need more people? Yes, we need more people, and then in our department specifically. And as we started to interview and look for people and recruit, I realized, hey, what we're calling an estimator three, take that for example, is really not what these folks do, right? So we're hiring for this position that they're interviewing for something that maybe isn't what they actually think is the position. So how do we get that information across? Because the job description for an estimator one, a pre-construction manager, an estimating three, really is all the same. We're doing the same things, just at different levels. So how do we express that information to the folks that we're hiring? So one, we don't waste their time on maybe a position that they're completely overqualified for, and then we don't waste our time as well. And speaking with more and more folks, that line starts to get blurred, right? people use pre-construction manager and estimator interchangeably, even though some folks look at that as very different positions and different activities that you do on a daily basis. But I think that we need to start really understanding what their background is and less focus on, oh, you were an estimator one, well, then you're an estimator one here, because that probably is not the case. Everywhere is different. I'm getting that inkling from the industry, and the more people I talk to, oh, okay, that's not what our estimators do. That's completely different.
It's amazing, the whole industry. I mean, we talked earlier about standardization of titles. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I was on a round table recently, a pre-con round table. It was set up by Kyle Bond at Hensel Phelps, who does a brilliant job of getting people together. There must have been four, I would say maybe 8 or 9 general contractors on there, and the topic of discussion was titles and standardization. And the conclusion of that, it's never going to go like that. There was people on there talking about changing everything, taking away pre-construction and estimating and calling planning managers. There was other design build managers. Then there was companies saying we're getting rid of estimating. It's just going to be pre-construction the whole way down. So it's impossible to get it right. But how did you go about it? What was the conclusion at the Boldt Company? Were you guys going to change your titles, change your roles, the responsibilities? Was it all to do with the job description?
Yeah, so we didn't change any job titles or anything like that. We are a nationwide company, so getting that changed just because our department works differently maybe than the rest of the country was not a path we wanted to go down. So what we did is we really focused on the activities of a project and the types of projects we do. So we created this long matrix of every finite task that could possibly be done through the process, right? Calling subcontractors, doing the quantity takeoff, setting up the procurement log, everything that you could possibly do in a project. And then we started to assign when it happens within the project or within the duration, and then who appropriately needs to do that. So essentially we threw all the sticks in the fire and we said, here's your team, now assign the sticks to people, everyone take one. And sometimes I do tasks that maybe a project manager would historically do, and vice versa. Sometimes I have the project engineer doing the quantity takeoff because that's where it fell in the process, and that's who had the capacity or needed that training or needed to understand that, right? Hey, I don't understand doors, frames, and hardware. Is there any way that I could take on that bid package? I know that's not something that a project engineer does. It's usually an estimator, but giving that opportunity within the actual tasks of the project. So we went a little bit of a different direction, and we kind of did a all hands in and said, all right, here's how we're assigning it. So we have a big kickoff meeting and we start assigning those tasks. And then it's easier for us to replan. So if something happens or someone decides to go to another company or someone has a baby or they're out for a sabbatical or whatever it is, it's really easy to replan. And it's not a panic of, oh my gosh, now the PX has to take over the estimate and they don't have any idea of what's going on. They've been fully integrated through some of the steps, maybe not doing them, but everyone knows what everyone else is doing. And we found that's really helped to, one, round out our people a little bit better in training and understanding as a whole the industry. And then again, that piece where it's not a fine line, right? Oh, that's not my task. Sorry, I'm an estimator. I don't do that, right?
Yeah, it's funny, and when you've done that, I'm sure the clarity and people probably appreciate other people's roles more when you actually go through a process like that. And I totally get it that it's not finite. Everyone's got to wear a number of hats. Do you at the Boldt Company do the estimating separate to the pre-construction, or do the pre-construction managers get involved in the estimating? This is kind of a topic of conversation, especially with maybe some of the larger projects where the estimators are involved in getting the number, winning the work, and then it's handed the pre-con team who have taken it, who take it on from until operations.
Yeah, so pre-construction and estimating at Boldt is really one group. That's how a lot of folks look at it. And then we have operations. So our estimators / pre-constructions, like my title is technically pre-construction and estimating manager. So we look at those as you're doing both tasks or both sets of things.
Yeah.
We stay on the project from RFQ, RFP, all the way through up until buyout. So we stay on the project until we are contracted with our trade partners and subcontractors. So we actually are with the operations team in the meetings, in the user group meetings, in the design meetings, all the way through up until they're ready to buy out each piece of the project. So it's really great for me because I get to see what the project managers do, and it helps me be a better estimating and pre-construction manager because I know what they do, so I can adjust my workflow to help them in the future, and vice versa. They know what I do, so their workflow can help me in the early stages. But once it gets into that true pre-construction phase where you're designing and you're looking at different options for code and analyzing the drawings, it's really a hybrid effort between the project manager and the pre-construction manager. We're working in tandem, we're discussing constructability reviews in tandem, and that's where we really had to put all the tasks down so that way we understood, since there wasn't a fine black and white line of what we do and what operations did, we had to really define that and understand, okay, we're doing this together, but who is the keeper of the keys, right? And assign that.
Yeah, that's where it comes. I mean, at the end of the day, we've got people, we've got technology, and we've got processes. Those are the three. When you did that task, and I'm sure there's loads of people listening that are maybe going through that task right now, did you change processes? Was it a case of refining processes, or did you develop more processes for the pre-con and estimating team?
It was really refining the process, and then how we communicate, right? With the types of projects we do, design build and IFOA, there tends to be a lot of meetings between user groups and owner and us internally and us and the architect. And so we really try to just refine the process and how we communicate with each other. That's been our biggest heartache, is how we communicate the information, right? Something that I see might not be something I would take down in notes and send to the folks, right, after a meeting. But then 10 months down the road, they're like, oh my gosh, this is brand new information. And I'm like, oh, it's not brand new information. I knew that, I just didn't realize it was important to you.
Yeah.
So because I didn't communicate properly. So that's been one of the processes that we really, really had to refine, and we're still working on it, right? What's the best way to disseminate all the information?
Yeah.
Who does that? Who has the time to do that? And how do we do it? Some people love notes, some people love the Teams chat, some people love ACC, which is our software that we use for project management. Everyone loves a different thing, but how do we all agree on one? So that's something we talk about day one in our kickoff meeting. How are we communicating? What's, it might be different on this job because this group loves this program or whatever it is. So we really refine the processes, and then we really had to learn to be flexible, right? As estimators, sometimes we can be stubborn. We like our processes and we like our ducks in a row. So when someone throws a wrench in it, it can be difficult for us to change. So I think the flexibility is key in hybriding the processes, so to speak.
A lot of people listening nodding a lot now, Kaylee. It's troublesome for everyone. It's about who gets what communication and what time during the process. How has technology helped you with that? You mentioned ACC, the operations side of technology. What are you using at the moment with pre-construction and estimating to help with that information gathering, historical information, getting the information through to the ACC or the project delivery team?
Yeah, so we actually have now set up ACC early on in our processes. So it is available to us to utilize the notes feature at the beginning of a project. So at the earliest stages, I'm able to pop in, create an ACC project, and start taking my notes right away. So that way, from the beginning to the end, all of our project meetings are in ACC. That's not the way that all of us do it, but that's the end goal, right? And then there's a historical trail, so to speak, of, oh yeah, let's go back in all these meetings. This is what we discussed. We also use Building Connected, their notes feature for communication with subcontractors. I realized early on that there was a break in my communication process of, I have these conversations with subcontractors and then I don't do anything with the information. I keep it in my email, right? I send an email, thanks for chatting, here's what we discussed. And then I never send that to anybody. So really putting all that information and building connected, which also transfers to ACC, which is great, um, is important to me. And I try and PDF any emails, right? Attach it to the proposal. Make sure that anything I've discussed is shared with folks. But ACC's been a godsend. It's been great and building connected. So I think those two pieces have been huge.
Good. Now, obviously, the Preconstruction Podcast is not familiar with operations software. I know Procore, ACC. What does that stand for? I've never heard of them.
Autodesk Construction Cloud.
Cool. Autodesk, of course.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, yeah, we know Autodesk. No, that's good to know, and that to me is the flow of information from RFQ right through is the most important thing. So getting that right, everyone's struggling with it, but it's interesting hearing how other people do it. And the one thing that when we talked about the titles and defining what they do is for the next generation. So when they come in, it's seamless, so it doesn't look like organized chaos that they're going to have to ask loads of questions. That almost documentation and definition of what they're supposed to be doing is there. Was that the biggest driver for that task that you went through?
It really was. We didn't really have something to show anyone. So and specifically for estimating, I can't speak fully to the operation side, but I know in estimating, when I was getting ready to bring an intern on board, usually I have infographics and I have flowcharts and all these things to show them, here's the task and here's how you do it. We didn't have that. It was because we do such unique work, specifically with our IFOA agreements, that there just wasn't anything that existed that I could hand off to someone. It was how you just have to experience it, right? We
You
have
got to
to
go through.
develop the task as we do it.
You got to go through the pain like everyone else. That's just part of the
Exactly,
process.
yeah. Which isn't fair, right? Just because we went through the pain doesn't mean that everyone else has to. So that was really the driving factor, is bringing on folks into the department and then being forced to answer that question when they asked, "Oh, what do you do?"
Yeah.
Well, I don't really have a definition of what I do. I
I
just
just
do it.
I just get things done, put fires out, throw some numbers at it. Yeah, no,
Exactly,
it's
right.
difficult.
I'm a
And
great
that's
guesstimator.
that's the beauty of it. I mean, I've been talking recently to thought leaders, and they reckon that developing an LMS, a learning management system, is really difficult. It's really time consuming. But in the long run, if you're looking to grow from 150, 200 million to over a billion, then it will save you thousands and thousands in the long run. So I agree. And there's nothing off the shelf. I don't think there's anything out there that's off the shelf. But and I don't think would an off the shelf kind of piece of software or system work, because everyone does some stuff so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's a tricky one. So how's it going? How are you getting? What's the lessons been learned? Are you finally finished it now, or are you still? Is it still a work in progress?
Still a work in progress.
Yeah.
We're actually starting some larger projects that have larger teams, and so it'll be interesting to see how it works and how it flows. And the most important thing is the buy-in from the group,
Yeah.
right? Buy-in from leadership, buy-in from for everyone from the engineers to leadership, right? Making sure that not only that we're following the process, but that the product and what we've ran into is the product of one estimator isn't the same product of another estimator, and everyone's brains work a little bit different. So how do we still produce the same product, but taking those tools that are good because they are unique and different, and applying them as well? So it's a work in progress for sure. We're still working on it. We're going through kind of our pilot program, so to speak, if you want to call it, right now. But it's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of it, and joining a company who's 135 years old. I never thought that I would get the opportunity to be a part of the early processes and a part of developing processes. But because, like you said, construction changes on a daily basis. we get to be the people of change. So it's a huge opportunity, and it's great.
Yeah. And listen, your generation and the next generation are so important. I keep talking about it. Anybody with between 8 and 15 years experience, those are the people that's going to change the industry. It's not going to be the people, unfortunately, that are maybe towards the end of their career. And knowledge retention from those people kind of meshed in and in the DNA of what you are bringing to the industry. It can only be a good future for the Boldt Company. Yeah, I love it. Well, we could talk here all day. Unfortunately, time is against us. So I would love to say thank you, really, for giving up your time, especially so early. Your dog, God love him, he stayed sleeping, which is brilliant. But if there is anybody, Kaylee, out there that thinks, you know what Kaylee was talking about or touched on is something that I'm going through at the minute, I would love to ask her a couple of questions just on how she's getting on, or maybe something that they're stuck on. Where's the best place to get you?
LinkedIn.
Perfect. I'll put your LinkedIn profile down in the show notes as well, so people can connect with you, drop you a message, and hopefully we can catch up in 6 to 12 months and hear about the perfectly aligned processes and documentation and definition within an estimator that you've got.
I love it.
Thanks, Kaylee. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.